Hello. Um, the 9 areas of mastery. When we build our skills as musicians, we often focus on select things at a time, and that's a great way to go. Really focus on one thing at a time and get that under your control. But what happens is that we sometimes forget that being a master of any craft really consists of many different areas that you have to master. And if you master all areas or have all the tools or all the skills, then you master the entire style. And so it's a good idea to really get clear on what does this take and what do I need to focus on a broad perspective over time to really get the skills that I want. And these 9 areas are a really good place to start. And then you can write them down, put them on your wall, and make sure that you work a little on each of these areas over time. So let's do them, let's get to them. The first area, which is really the most fundamental one, is scales and arpeggios. And in the program, we use what I call the one scale approach, and I've been doing another video about that you might want to see if you haven't seen it already. But that's really taking all the tools, scales, arpeggios, pentatonic, harmonic, melodic, minor, and so on, and then just saying we want to build one tool that we can use for all purposes. And instead of learning each of these tools one by one, we integrate them into one tool right away. So we really just have one thing to learn. And that's really the approach of this. And the tool that I give you in this section is what I call the NCA Tools Training Method. And that will really not only give you a perspective, a philosophy of how to approach this area, it will also give you a step-by-step method that you can use to, number one, figure out where you are on this skill level, and then take the next logical step. And the next logical step is always easy, it's always pleasurable, because the second things get hard for you, that's when you know you do too much at a time, and then your progress will slow down. That's not how it seems, but that's how it is. And so for each of these areas in the program, we have a philosophy which you really want to look into, a way of thinking, a way of looking at this area that is the most efficient, in my experience, of getting there faster, of getting that skill faster. And then number 2, we have a tool for each of these areas, and that tool is a training method, or it's just a tool that you can use without practicing at all. That's how it is sometimes, but otherwise it's a tool that you can use to know when to take or where to take the next step. And that's really the first area here. Then as a number 2 very important thing, we need, because one thing is to have the scales and the arpeggios. When we got that in place, we just know the notes and the concepts. But then what we need to do is get ourselves some melodic control. We want to know, in other words, what scales and tools and arpeggios to use when. When can I use just one scale and play across all the chords? When can I use just one arpeggio? When do I want to go into a specific scale or use a specific tool over what chord? All these things. And the philosophy of this area I call the safe zones theory, because that's really the theory of where to go in any chord progression. And when we're dealing with melodic rock, we have some very specific areas, we have some very specific tools, we have some gears that melodic rock or neoclassical metal goes into in different songs and different parts of the songs, and we want to master all those, so no matter what happens, we just know exactly what tool to go to. And that's really the safe zone automation training, which is the tool that you get. And that sounds very complex and very fancy. Really, what it consists of is me training you so that it becomes harder for you not to use the right tool at the right moment than it is to do the opposite. So, and what we're going to do there is simply put on jam tracks, and then those jam tracks will move you in different directions, and I'm going to guide you so you can hear me guide you of what tool to use within the one scale tool. And so when we do that enough, when you do that 10 to 15 minutes each day for a month, then you start getting this inner urge to actually follow the chord progression, to actually go where you need to go. And so it becomes almost harder for you not to go to the right note right there than it is for you to just play something that sounds weird. And So that's the whole concept of that. So we have the scales, we have the tools. Now we know what scales and tools to use where. Then number 3 is really the ability to build great sounding lines or licks with your tools. So now you know the notes and you have all that in place. Now we really need to be able to sit down before we play a solo and then compose something that just sounds awesome with the skills we have. And the philosophy of that area, that lick building area, is to divide every lick that you've ever played up into its basic elements. So we get building blocks or Lego blocks that we can put together into new licks. And so that's the philosophy of it. So first we're going to pick it apart and say, okay, what does it consist of? And then we're going to create what I call the NCA lick building method, which is really a method that you can use to take these building blocks and put them together in new ways, so you don't have to learn other people's licks to get into a new style here. And that's the whole philosophy and the tool of that area. I'm going to move on quickly now because we got 9 areas to cover here, and I don't want to bore you. And so the 4th area here, once you know how to build the great licks to the point where you can almost, do it instantly when you play, then we need what I call number 4, soloing power. And what is that? That's a fancy couple of words for the ability to never get into a rut when you play. You know, when you play and you suddenly just play the same freaking 3 licks over and over again, and it's like, I can do more than that, but you can't access all that you know because you're playing in front of people, so you get nervous or something else happens. You just have a lazy brain right there, and I'm going to explain that and why that happens to you right now. It's a very fast explanation, but I'll give it to you because all your brain ever does is associate. It goes, when you dream, for instance, it comes up with things on the basis of what you just dreamed. So you say one word and it comes up with a second word. You know the game where somebody says orange, a new person says lemon, a new person says apple, because you go from association to association. And that's what your brain does all the time. And when you play, you associate all the time. So I might play something like, and then my brain thinks, because I played that 1,000 times. So that's the association it makes. And then it's associate something new and something new. And the better I am at this craft here, the better I am at associating. But sometimes even you have all the tools and all the licks and you got 1,000 ideas, you can't access them. And when that happens, what happens is that you go from orange to lemon and then to apple. And that reminds you of orange again. And then you go to lemon and apple and orange and you go in circles like this, and you can't break out of that. You can't access all the other cool stuff that you've been trying to learn. Especially not when you're nervous, your brain goes into lock. And so the soloing power tool is really a context and associations training. I train you to jump out of that rut instantly. And we have a very specific tool for that as well, which is a tool I call the acronym of soloing power. And that's really a word where every single letter in the word stands for something that you can think of that will instantly move you to another place in your brain. So that's soloing power really, and that has helped me immensely, especially when I get into a situation where I don't feel quite at home and I need something to really help me focus and get into new stuff. The next thing is the 5th area, and that is guitar virtuoso techniques. Because one thing is to have the skills and the tools, and to be able to know where to use what tools, and to be able to build licks, and to be able to not go into a rut. The 5th thing would be guitar virtuoso techniques, because we need to be able to produce the notes. And the philosophy of that area is neural training and development, because training your fingers to do these amazing things is really a completely different process than learning theory or learning any of the other stuff I've just told you, where you learn fretboard patterns or you practice using your tools. The techniques part is a completely different area, and we use the neural training and development philosophy here because we're working with patterns in your brain. Motor skills really that we need to work on, and what we use there is the ultimate skill building method. In all humbleness, I say that because I really believe that the method I'm going to show you, after many iterations, after building it and improving it over the years, is the ultimate way to practice these virtuoso techniques. And I think you'll find, because we're going to prove it to you in the beginning, where you do a little exercise every day in this specific way, and I'm to prove it to you that this actually works. And if you've bought all of my other programs, some of the concepts here will be similar, but you'll also find that I've been spending the last 4 years refining these techniques, and I've come up with a little box, a little method that you can use to really get results, and that's on the motor level, and that's on the mental, emotional level as well, because building these skills can be daunting at times, and we really need to get the mental stuff in place so that we not cop out or think, oh, I can't do it, or all these things. So I've really gathered together a core set of concepts there that you can use to really make sure that you're going to go all the way to the end and really learn these methods and techniques. So that completes the first part, really. And if you put on the next video, I'm going to talk about the composing part, and that should be it. So, so just to chop things up here for you, take a break, get a cup of coffee, and then put on the next video.